no, because I wanted to look.
Okay, we're going to get...
Okay, go. I got two things I want to add to the agenda.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to get our regular council meeting of March the 27th underway. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here this evening. Before we get into tonight's agenda, there's just a few comments that I would like to make. I firstly wish to formally acknowledge the passing of Councillor Vic Derman from Saanich. Vic Derman was also a CRD director and served our communities very well in the time that he was with us. He was very progressive on climate change matters, sustainability, and I know that I'll miss him at the CRD table. So I just wanted to make those comments. I know that his celebration of life will be held next Sunday at the Victoria Conference Centre at 2 o'clock. They are expecting a very significant turnout. He was a teacher before he was a councillor, and I know he certainly has made an impact on this region. So thank you, Vic, for your service to all of us. Secondly, I wish to formally thank and acknowledge Mr. Gabriel Joseph. Today is his last council meeting, regular council meeting, and it's been, I guess, about a year or so that you've been here in the district. So I just wish to formally thank you for all of your efforts, for putting up with me, always coming up with solutions, getting our ducks in order, our records where they should be, and the like. So thank you very much for your contributions. So now as we turn to this evening's agenda, we have an agenda presented. I know that there's a few items that councillors would like to add, so I'd like to begin with Councillor Pearson, please.
Yes, thank you, and good evening. I have two items that I'd like to add to the agenda tonight. One is and I don't want to say the word four-way stops, but the intersection of Sunriver and Poplar Drive.
Okay.
Okay, because that's come to us in your public session 2 times now, so I think it's better discussion. Also, I'd like to have a discussion on Lot A, and I would think that the discussion would lead us towards a discussion around zoning.
Lot A? Okay.
Lot A, okay.
All right. I would like to add a third item, and that is the Notori Japan Student Exchange Program. And was there anything else from members of council? Okay, there were a few corrections to the meeting minutes from March the 13th. So there is replacement minutes in the yellow package. So I would like council to move the agenda with the additions and the amended minutes, please.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Berger. Any question? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. We have meeting minutes, please. We have the minutes of regular and special meetings. We have meeting minutes from the Special Council of March the 6th. I guess we can do them individually. Anyone like to move adoption?
Move adoption.
Moved adoption by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Casper. Any corrections? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. March the 9th, Special Council meeting.
So moved.
Moved adoption by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Casper. Any corrections or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? None. That's carried unanimously. And March the 13th, regular council meeting. Yes, we'll move the amended version by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Opposed? This motion is carried. Okay. There are no delegations, so we'll move into our public question and comment period. This section here is for any items that are specifically on tonight's agenda, and there is 2 minutes allowed per speaker. And if there's something that you would like to address council on, we just require your name, your address, and if you could please direct us to which item you have a comment about so we can turn to the relevant section of the agenda, please. So, welcome anyone forward. Okay. Yes, it is specific to the agenda, so. No, it's this section here, for clarity, is always at the beginning, and it's just to give any input or comments on any matters. If there was a question that you feel council needs to ask staff, then we will collect all of those. And that's why it has to be specific, because we are deliberating on these items today, so the items, the commentary is specific to the agenda.
Would that include the new motions that are brought up?
Yes, so if you would like to come forward, sir, you will need to turn on the microphone.
Okay.
And we just require your name and address, please.
My name's Rob Pearce, 2407 Poplar Drive in Sooke. I just wanted to discuss briefly about the intersection of Poplar and Demamiel. It's not just a speed issue, it is a line of sight issue. Like I've said 2 weeks ago and then earlier and today, the speed is an issue, but the fact that you can't see at the best of times because of the way the corner is designed. I think the quickest and cheapest option would be a four-way stop. I think that would create the least amount of grief. You know, it would be nice to see some raised sidewalks to slow people down if the four-way stop doesn't rectify that problem. But I think that would be the quickest, and that's what I think the majority of people that I've talked to in our neighborhood would like to see. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearce. Are there any other comments from members of the public? Okay, so seeing none, we'll just move straight into our agenda now and into our bylaw section. 6.1 is Future Policing Cost Reserve Bylaw number 653. And the recommended action there is that the District of Sooke Future Policing Cost Reserve Bylaw 653 be adopted. Moved adoption by Councillor Casper, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any discussion on adoption of the bylaw? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. Okay. Next, we have 7,000 Melrick Place rezoning, and we have our written report, but also a staff report from our planner. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. The application before you tonight is to rezone 7,000 Melrick from rural RU2 to rural residential RU4. In February of this year, the owner provided road dedication to facilitate the extension of Brailsford Place, as shown on the survey plan. A subsequent subdivision application was approved separating the property at the new Brailsford Road dedication. So the rezoning application before Council today is to rezone 7,000 Melrick, which is the property north of the Brailsford extension. Next one, yeah. The owners of 7,000 Melrick would like to subdivide their existing residence from the property as shown highlighted in pink. Rezoning to RU4 will permit the owners to apply for the proposed subdivision. This property is designated as community residential by the official community plan, and the rezoning application is consistent with the plan. The applicant is here tonight for any questions. Thank you.
Questions from council to staff, please. Is there any? Okay, there is a recommended action, and that is to provide first reading.
Second.
Okay, move first reading to Bylaw 663, zoning amendment Bylaw 635 to rezone 7,000 Melrick Place from rural RU2 to rural residential RU4. That's been moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any discussion on the motion as it's presented? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. We have second reading moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Casper. Any discussion on second reading? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And lastly, the recommendation is that a public hearing be scheduled for Bylaw 663 in accordance with Section 466 of the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any discussion on the public hearing? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Johnson. Okay, next item is item 6.3. Council has met through, I think, 4 special council meetings and 1 committee of the whole to deliberate on the 5-year financial plan in this year's budget. So going from those discussions, staff have prepared the bylaw that you see here in front of us. So I appreciate that there may be some outstanding queries from members of council. Councillor Ray.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just want to go back to and those minutes weren't available tonight, and I appreciate that we just did the community grants on Wednesday. And there was an error by myself when we were deliberating, and I had recommended for the Wanda Fuca Society for Ground Search and Rescue $2,500, but my calculation was wrong. It should have been $3,500. We spoke about covering the cost of 50 sweaters. And so that actual cost is $3,500. So I'm not sure whether or not there would be support to, if rather than looking to try and amend anything, if there would be support to take it from council contingency, or if there's support to give them the extra $1,000, because that was the comment at the table, that we would cover those 50. So I'm not sure how's the best way to do that.
Yeah, because the sweaters, and I do recall the conversation, they were for 50 volunteers at a cost of $70. So yeah, you're right, it should have been $3,500. Councillor Casper.
I had heard that when council had deliberated that the amount of money that they approved was under the budget amount. Is that correct?
That's correct. The final amount was $49,061. So there's $939 left in the community grants.
So what are we talking about? $1,000. $1,000, and you're short 65?
61.
I'm sure we'll find $61. So if we need a motion to amend the budget accordingly, so moved.
Okay, so that is to amend the budget by $1,000 in the community grant category to the ground Wanda Fuca Search and Rescue. So that's been moved by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Pearce and Councillor Ray? Councillor Ray. Any discussion on that motion? That was exactly the conversation, but then we all wrote down 2,500 and looked at it many times. So.
That was my error.
Well,
I did the calculations.
We all could have added 50 times 70 and got the right number. Okay, I'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. And that keeps us basically in line except for the $31. Other questions? Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. I first want to apologize for not being able to make the last 2 budget meetings. I had some unexpected family things to attend. So I'll be brief. I just had a couple questions. I did go back and watch both of the meetings and try to get most of my answers through that, and I did. Some of it was a bit cumbersome. I think there was some wording on a motion that took quite a bit of time. But anyhow, so my first question, and I only have a few, is page 5. So through you to staff, or maybe you know the answer. I just was curious, and on page 5 under corporate services, it talks about natural gas. It's showing that we're not spending anything going forward, but then it's also showing that electricity is going down 10,000. I just thought that was interesting. Was there any?
There's no more heat to be supplied to the building. No, so I'll get an answer.
That's why it's always cold here.
From staff on that. I'm not sure. Maybe to our finance director. Corporate page 5, corporate services.
Oh.
Okay, there's nothing for natural gas, and then on the hydro.
Yeah, sorry, it says under electricity that's going down 10,000, and I just was a bit curious. Yeah, just a bit curious.
Okay.
Yep, Sullivan's.
Yes, Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger. The Fortis bill is for the fire department, so that's been allocated to the fire department out of corporate services. And then we've also adjusted any costs that relate to other departments that have gone over, so some of the electricity has gone over as well.
Thank you. It just seemed odd as a whole that we were saving that much. And then just for clarification, just to finish off corporate services, I replayed this a couple times. I just wanted to clarify for myself. Under salaries, there's 0.6 of a position going to records management as well as a front desk position. I couldn't get quite clarity on that in the webcasting.
Through Your Worship, yes, that's correct. There's a 0.6 records management person as well as a full-time receptionist.
Thank you. And sorry, these are probably redundant. I just wanted to get clarification for my own self and watching the videos. On page 8, under development services, there's a hold on, sorry. I'm just trying to follow my notes. I wrote it down twice. So under development services, when there's salary adjustments, and I got from the video as well that there's 0.6 of a planner that was added in 2016, and then there's an increase again in 17, I believe. And so it was a small increase. So is that just a makeup of, was it a half year or?
I think part of it was, and staff can correct me on this, is part of it was last year was a partial year and this is reflecting a full year. And I think it's also allocating our director position part to planning and also to engineering. Because before it was just sort of all put in one category, but because he's overseeing both of those departments, there's a split occurring there, so that's being reflected that way.
Yeah, I had that name down just as a question mark under both, and I thought I caught that from the webcast as well, but I just wanted to clarify just for my own self. And then also on page 8 under building inspection. So again, that was a addition of a part 0.6, I believe I heard, a 0.6 position as well as a building inspector?
I don't believe there's an inspector. It's just a 0.6 plan checker. I'll get, maybe our director can add a little more.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger. It was intended that it would be a 0.6 position, and hopefully it would be a plan checker and more of a technical component rather than a building inspector. This would allow the building inspectors to be free to do their inspections while this person sat back and did all the plan checking to expedite our process.
Okay, so it'll be that. That's where I was confused. Sorry, it's just ringing a bell to me as I'm remembering the webcasting. So it was a 0.6 for a plan checker / tech, like that 0.6 of position will do both?
Yes, it would. I would be looking for somebody that can do plan checking but have somewhat of a technical background to help us out generally within the development services program.
Okay, plus tech. Okay, thank you so much. Page 9, under development services again, the boat launch parking lease that we have, I just was curious as to, and I was hoping that maybe this conversation came up, but I didn't hear on the webcast. I noticed elsewhere in our budget, and I forgot to write down the page number, that the boat launch parking meter down at the boat launch is actually working well. So I'm wondering if we possibly could have a conversation around installing a parking meter down there. The new boat launch parking lease that we have, and I went down there and saw the site and the trail, and it's a beautiful piece, but it's going to cost us roughly $90,000 throughout this budget. So my thought instantly went to maybe the council should have a discussion regarding a parking meter at that parking lot.
I think that's a good idea. I think that's a conversation we need to talk about the boat launch and parking.
Absolutely.
You know, kind of next meeting, have a conversation on, because that comes up and the parking there is still a mess and it's unsafe. And what is working and not working in those areas. And so I guess right now, if you park, I guess that's a conversation to have, because if you're there early and you can park at the Prestige, you pay, but you can park there. Whereas if you arrive late, you park for free, but you have to walk. So I think that's something that we'll need to think about.
I think it's definitely worthy of a conversation. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously at a future council meeting, but I think it's something that we do need to discuss.
Yeah.
I don't have the answers for the parking mess that we have down
No.
there. But when we're looking at it over a 5-year budget, that does work out to $90,000, which is roughly just over a 1% tax increase. So to me, it feels like it is something that we do need to discuss, and we do need to look at, okay, what are our best options? What's going to work best for our taxpayers' dollar?
Yeah, I think I'm really glad you raised that, because it's important. I think we need to talk about the Prestige and the boat launch and all that. We have it before and then like an after conversation. So later this year, as we go into deliberations, then we can amend all the future years accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I don't have the answers for down there. I was hesitant when we first got into the lease for the boat launch parking, but then actually going and walking the site and looking at it, because I don't know any other answer or any other solution.
Yeah.
To me, if it seems to work and people are parking there, I just was thinking of maybe is there a way that we can, I know it's $10 to park at the boat launch, maybe it's $5 to park when you walk the trail. So I just thought that could be a good conversation for us to come, to direct staff to come back at another council meeting to discuss that.
Yeah, I think we need to have a conversation, maybe next meeting if we can, just a general about here's where there's no parking. These are some staff comments, council comments from the last season, what worked well, what didn't work well. What does signage look like? Is it effective? What more? And then we can talk about this at the same time. So I don't really think we need a report, but I think we need to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
The next one that I really wrestle with is the downtown parking lease. That one works out to, going forward, it's going to be $24,000 a year. And in a 5-year budget, that's $120,000. That's closer to a 2% tax increase. That one I really wrestle with, because I just don't see that there's value for dollar. So for me, I'm not supportive of having that one in the budget. To me, it's almost the cost of another police officer. And it's a small piece downtown. Again, I don't know what the fix is. I can foresee that being excellent parking for new establishments that are out and about in the area. I have a hard time with that one. So that one is one line item in the budget that I can't support. I think that we need to discuss at a later date, but I'm not. The boat launch one, I'm happy leaving it there, because I think there might be some remedies and there's some things we can do about it. The downtown parking lease, I don't know the legality of the lease, and I don't know what it is for us to get out of it, but I'd be in favor of getting out of that lease.
Okay, I think that's another one. Maybe over to our CEO. The comment I was going to have there is that at our last meeting, we received a letter from the Chamber of Commerce about how residents are parking on Eustis Road, even though we have signage, for 2 hours, and parking there all day, using it as a park and ride. And that is something that's happening in various areas, shopping mall parking and the like. So the idea was to encourage people to use this lot if they don't want to drive all the way to the park and ride. The other thing is pedestrians are finding it very challenging to go down Otter Point Road. So now with the work that's happening, so they're being recommended to start shifting to park into that lot. And some are doing it, or they're actually leaving a bit more of a buffer so it's a bit safer, because it's a high pedestrian area to walk and it's difficult with the vehicles. And then, of course, when there's events at the hall, the Legion and the like, I think that the whole idea was a bit of town parking.
Yeah,
so I think
I definitely understand and can appreciate the theory behind it. I just, my mind sort of goes to, and we've had the complaint numerous times about people treating it as a park and ride. I don't know how we maybe advocate to BC Transit to look at them to establish another parking ride down that side of.
I could go on about BC
Yeah.
Transit, which I'll do
So-
in my update report. That's not happening in the near future, but I will take a breath and save that
Yeah.
for a bit later. It is in their future plan, though, to have one there. It's just not going to happen soon.
I can imagine it's challenging. It doesn't sit well for me within a 5-year budget for us to spend what could be a 2% tax increase. Forgive the lay term, it's just not the best bang for our buck is is the way I see that line item.
Okay, comment from our CAO?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger. The lease was intended to be a 2-year, or it is a 2-year lease. The reason we went 2 years is because we wanted to monitor the situation to see how it was working and if it was working. After the lease was signed, we had the application for the brew pub that's going right next door there. So I think Councillor Berger's comments are well timed in that we should have a conversation about how things are going, and the district certainly doesn't want to be perceived to be providing aid to a business or a local business. That said, we do have numerous complaints from businesses in that area that residents are using Eustis as a park and ride, and therefore their clientele can't get into the stores. There's nowhere to park, so they feel like they're losing revenue stream as a result of that. So staff were certainly taking a look at how do we relieve some of the parking congestion as well as meeting the needs of our local businesses. And it's certainly something that I think staff can go away and have a conversation at the staffing level and come back and share the results of that with council. But I do say it is a 2-year lease. I'm sure there's an opt-out clause, and we can come back and talk with you about that.
Okay, thank you. And I just think that if we're having to expend this much money and there's really a problem as far as parking and we've got signs in place, then I think that we need to maybe discuss and direct bylaw to go down there and start issuing fines. Rather than, the people that are causing the problem should be paying for it, not, the entire district's taxes on its own. So if we have a 2-year lease, then that gives me solace in knowing that we can keep it there for 2 years. But then I don't know if that, do we take it out now once the 2 years gone, as opposed to coming back to make an amendment to discuss it, or what's the best course of action? Because if it ends in 2 years,
it shouldn't be 5 years out anyway.
Okay.
So we were just smoothing budget out. So sorry, I put my mic on. It's certainly something that we can keep in for. We did it in 2016, 2017. So 18, 19, 20, we can take it out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And just one comment about bylaw. It's important to remember that our bylaw officer, it works 8:30 to 4:30. A lot of these people are starting to park at 7 and they don't get back until 6. So issuing tickets is one thing, but we only have one bylaw enforcement officer who is dealing with a multitude of files with respect to unsightly premise and a whole lot of other hosts of things that she needs to do. And in fact, when she's not around, our building inspectors are a de facto bylaw. Which is never an ideal situation. So I think at some point in time we do need to have that conversation about how the district wants to approach bylaw enforcement. And because as the community continues to grow, the demands for services on our bylaw officer is going to continue to increase.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Okay, thank you. I'm almost done. Page 14. Oh, sorry.
Councillor Casper, did you have a response for this?
No, yes, on this one, yes. We have a bylaw in place where if there's a business that cannot supply the required parking, then we have the ability to charge a fee to build up a fund to provide parking space in Sooke. There's never been a fee structure established, and the bylaw has never been implemented. Case in point, Prestige Hotel, relaxation of close to 50% of the requirements. The bylaw was never enforced, or it was never implemented. So on something like this, there's an opportunity to generate money to pay for a spot if someone cannot supply parking. I've gone around there at night, and there are vehicles parking there because of the spillover from the commercial businesses that truly cannot accommodate the parking. They can't meet it. They couldn't meet it 8 years ago. The district actually gave one business there relaxation because there were not enough parking spaces. And so now you see 3 separate brand new establishments that cater to the public in a very active way, and the parking lot is full. So I think that has to be looked at too.
I think we can have that conversation altogether. I think the conversation around parking needs to happen post-budget, and then we can look at discussing that bylaw and policy enforcement and all those things. That makes sense. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Berger.
Thank you. Page 14, under expenditures, there's the, sorry, where is it? $200,000 listed for public space enhancement program. For the life of me, I can't remember what that is.
Sorry, I'm looking at page 14 and I see protective services.
No, it's under capital.
On capital.
Or page
Sorry,
16?
Sorry, Joanna, I might be going off the old.
Okay, sorry, I was going on, I'm on the new one.
I'm
So,
in my binder, so I'll try and correspond here.
okay, I got it. So you're under capital.
Yes, and it's $200,000 for public space enhancement program.
Okay, I'll get a response from staff, please.
Yes, Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger. This is the used to be stuff that came from the Parks and Trails Committee, but it's all the different projects that are really more parks related. For example, fixing of the trail in John Phillips Park, that would fall under that category. But I think the Development Services Director would speak more to that.
Maya, can you ask where note 3 is?
Sorry, was there something further from our director?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger, the monies for the public space enhancement would be for things like the downtown core during festive events and things like that, like we did for the roundabout and the plantings, etc. We're keeping it sort of separate from the parks function.
Thank you. I just put parks
Just a
on there.
comment.
Note 3.
Note 3. Sorry, can you clarify for me? Note. I don't understand.
No, it's listed on the package, but I've never been able to find note 3.
Yeah, I have that question too.
Yeah, if I may, Your Worship, that's a typo from a previous version.
Because I've been looking for 2 weeks for note 3.
Okay, 2 weeks.
Well, I
Okay,
thought it was me.
so that's been removed probably because there's no note. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll clarify. We were on page 16, which is 56 in your materials. Thank you, Councillor Ray. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Berger.
Thank you. Then on page, if I use the new package 17, just under capital, I just have a couple questions. The sidewalk / trail from Maple Park south to Norden, it looks like there's 50,000 coming from casino revenue and 50,000 coming from gas tax. This one, and I'll talk about roads in a second, because our roads are in a lot of dire need of help. This one isn't a priority for me. And I know it's in our council priority package, but for what we're spending this year, and the reason why I had this noted is, if you remember a couple of meetings ago, I was also trying to look to see where we could save money for another police officer, but Councillor Casper came up with that. So this one just spoke to me that it didn't seem to be a priority for 2017, and that if the money were needed to go towards roads, I was just in favor of putting it towards fixing some of our roads. So I'll just leave that as a comment. I just had that noted from, these are just notes from the meeting that I missed. Clarity on rainwater management program. I'm just wondering, and I tried to attentively listen on the webcasting. Is this, I believe the conversation went into Goodmere. Is this works through you, Your Worship, to Mr. Howitt? Is the rainwater management to do with the flooding and problems that we have down there?
Your Honor, or Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger, this rainwater management plan is a follow-through from last year's commitment to have an ongoing rainwater management program to resolve past issues with regards to flooding. This is not relevant to the Goodmere Road issue at all. This is a separate funding.
So is this just for drainage throughout the town centre and stuff? We had some issues at Charters, I believe. Or okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm just making a little note. Sorry for asking all these questions. I just wanted to clarify it on my own. On page, sorry, let me catch up. It was page 23 of the old package, just under the sewer fund.
So that was page 20. You're looking at sewer 23 in the old package, and then in the new package, sewer starts on page 25.
Yes.
And what page is that in the agenda, Councillor Ray? 65.
Just had a quick question for my own clarification. Where it says contracts and consultants, is that when we need to do like water testing and that sort of stuff with the sewer plant?
Contractors and consultants.
Curious as to what that is.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger, the contractors and consultants are basically for our computer system and our monitoring of our lift stations, not necessarily for contracts for materials, etc. Just predominantly technical support.
Great, thank you. And you guys covered off the sewer capital fund. Sorry, I didn't check that one. On page 27 of the new package. I just had first of all, I wanted to say thank you for doing up a proposed expansion budget. It's nice to sort of have an idea of what's in front of you if and when we decide to go down this road. The only thing that cautioned me, it left me feeling a little bit unsettled because we haven't determined where the sewer expansion is going to go and what those fine numbers would look like. As much as this really helped give me an idea as to what we have coming down the pipe, I was uncertain whether or not this page belonged in the budget. For me, it felt like, is that going to tie our hands in the future to the numbers if this becomes part of a bylaw?
I don't believe so. Staff can clarify. It is an action item that with the OCP conversations, council needs to set policy on the direction, so it's in here to start planning.
I absolutely agree, but to be a page within our 5-year financial plan, it just didn't. I don't know proper policy, so maybe I'm wrong. It just felt a little bit odd to have these numbers within our budget when we don't know if we're expanding, when we're expanding, how much is that's going to cost. I mean, if this is actual hard numbers that everyone's already done and this is a done deal, then that's something different.
Okay, clarity from staff, please, from our finance director.
Yes, Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger. This is in here just to show the impact. We do need to start planning. We are going to be we're already at 70% capacity. We are going to reach a point where we're going to have to really get on board pretty quick here because it does take 2 years from decision date to actually have it up and ready. It doesn't impact any other numbers in here other than like the sewer fund is a fund on its own, and the expansion page in here, if I pulled it out, you wouldn't notice it at all in the bylaw. So it's just, it's a project all on its own, and it funds itself, so it doesn't impact any other taxes or anything.
Right, thank you. And I got that from reading this. I just wasn't sure from a policy or from a bylaw standpoint if it should, legally I didn't know if this should be in this package.
Okay.
If it doesn't have any bearing, then that's fine.
It would be a planning tool. Okay.
My last question was, and as I sorry, I'll use the old one because it's on the capital sheet. The last winter that we had did a number on our roads, and I think we're all very well aware of how much.
Sorry, Councillor Berger, you have the old fold-out sheet, right?
Yeah, just on the capital. Sorry, is there one
Okay,
in here?
I'm trying to let the public know as well what page we're on. So in the public package,
On
that would
capital
be
expenditures.
57?
Right, and 17 for us.
57 in this package, and, okay, go ahead, 17 in the old package.
So the very first one, Road Sidewalks Improvement Program, I wholeheartedly support that we need to get doing a whole lot of work on our roads. I think that they're in a lot of mess, and especially after this last winter, we saw some serious deterioration of our roads. The only part that left me a little bit unsettled was that we are looking to borrow $1 million for the road program, and again, I support that because it needs to get done. I'm just hesitant because we don't have the roads identified as well as quotes and costs for those works. If we need to borrow 1.5, I would probably support that too. But I think that for my own due diligence, I need to know what the roads are and how much it's going to cost to fix that road.
Okay, and that's a very good question. I think everyone struggled with looking at $1 million there, but we also understand the reality of our roads. What staff is doing here is basically putting forward a road maintenance plan for us. So my understanding that if this is adopted, we got sort of a overview sheet from our CAO that listed a whole bunch of roads and then what the status of those roads are. What our staff is now doing is identifying the roads and putting together an approximation on costs given the current price of materials. And then we'll bring that forward to us at a later date. So here's what we can look at for this year and then the years going forward. Is there any more to add to that from our CAO, please?
Thank you, Your Worship, to Councillor Berger. Part of the $1 million is for us to do a study, and we have to hire an expert to help us do that study. From the study, we will know which roads are priority and what the approximate costs are going to be. What we're asking Council to do is approve the $1 million borrowing, because we have to get on that right away. We would never spend any money on any road without coming back to Council for that priority list. So in essence, what we're asking you to do is approve the $1 million so we can get going on the borrowing, knowing full well that you're going to probably need over $20 million to get your roads, over the next number of years in decent shape. So what this is doing, what we're signaling is staff is coming to Council for the first time asking for support to come to develop a road maintenance schedule. And we can't do that on our own. So we need the funds in order to get the study done. The study will answer your very, very specific questions.
Does that help?
It does. It still doesn't help my unsettledness. And again, with all due respect, I wholeheartedly agree, and I think that we need to really put some money into our roads, and I support that. So it leaves me feeling uneasy to borrow without knowing. If we need more than $1 million, then I think that we need to go that way and borrow that way. It would make me feel more comfortable if we borrowed what we needed to get the study done and did that first, and then we had our priority list with X amount of dollars, and then we do the borrowing based on those priorities, based on whatever that number looks like. Whether it's more or less, I'm sure it's more, and that might be the way we go. It just for my own personal comfort, I want to know how much we're spending on what.
To our Director of Development Services, then to Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, the $1 million that we were asking for was, like the CAO was referring to, was to get us kick-started on a road maintenance program. We have actually allocated $50,000 over and above the $1 million for the study to be done, and unfortunately with the page numbering I can't find it, but I know it's prepared in the budget. But in the last little while, I was going through some old documentation that we have discovered in the office. And back in 2008, there was a high-level needs analysis done on our roads. And I just did a quick snapshot of 11 roads that were identified 2008 that were at that time poor, now have migrated to very poor. And out of those roads, you're talking about 6.6 kilometers of needed improvement, i.e. maybe base work, certainly pavement. You're looking at $1.1 million right there. The cost to pave a road is $177,000 per kilometer now. So it just gives you an indication of what kind of costs and what kind of needs program we're looking at for the future. But getting back to what the CAO was referring to, this is $1 million kickstart to get us going, and the $50,000 will do another needs analysis and bring us up to date. Because this winter just kicked the crap out of our roads. And if we don't do something quick, we're going to lose what we got.
And we did receive a report, Committee of the Whole, on March the 6th. There was the report, the schedule provided by Main Road that listed off, I don't even know how many roads there are, and noting medium and high priority. So that's what's sort of where our CAO introduced this matter, and then it's the case of going forward from here. I believe our finance director has something to add to the staff report.
Yes, Your Worship. I'd just like to add, these aren't maintenance projects. These are capital projects. The road maintenance is in the operating budget, and in order to borrow, we can't borrow for operating items, so we can only borrow for capital. So this is new road being put down. So.
Thank you, Councillor Ray.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Personally, I don't have a problem with this amount being set out. I think, and I was going to say that paving is extremely costly, and at $177,000 a kilometre, that isn't much for road work in the district of Sooke. And I just would like them to get on with it, so I have no problem with the $1 million and moving forward. I don't need all those details personally.
Okay. Anything further, Councillor Berger?
No, that was my last question. Everything else was just fairly little, and you guys answered that in watching the webcasting.
Okay. Well, thank you for tuning in and for your questions. Councillor Casper, please.
Well, I just want to pick up on the $1 million. We could approve this budget without having the $1 million there. Once the projects are identified, we can amend the budget and then do a borrowing based on real numbers, value for dollar, biggest bang for the buck. And I've never, ever approved anything which is tantamount to a blank check, ever. And every single project that has been previously approved in all the budgets that I've ever been involved in always had figures and these are the projects outlined within the budget. And with this $1 million, that's clearly not the case. So I can't support that. I don't think it's good business. There's nothing stopping the $50,000 from being spent to clearly identify, to get some cost estimates, and then bring forward a list. And then once that list is approved, then, as Councillor Berger mentioned, a bylaw then can be prepared and the budget can be amended. These budgets can be amended any day of the week. And, the source of payback for this money has not been identified as taxes. So it won't even impact the tax roll and what's going out this year for taxation, because I couldn't find source of revenue as being taxes. So that's point number one. Point number two is that I think it's good business. I don't know of many organizations that actually go out there and borrow money and they don't know what the heck they're going to do with it. It's unheard of. And I'll stand by that in all my years of public life. It's just not done. You do it with a specific purpose because you have to clearly demonstrate to the taxpayers why you're borrowing the money, where it's going to be spent, how it's going to be spent, and what value they're going to derive from that. You know, I would be adamantly opposed if $500,000 was spent on Murray Road. Adamantly opposed. I don't want to see that happen. But I have no guarantees that that isn't going to happen. Once $1 million borrowed, well, then it's easy peasy. And I just have to say that because I don't support a blank check borrowing. So.
Okay, I'll get a response from our staff, please.
Yes, Your Worship, through to Councillor Casper. The debt servicing is the principal is being paid off by the capital asset replacement reserve, so there is no impact on taxes. The interest, though, cannot be funded through a reserve, so the interest is being paid by taxes. The other point, we can't borrow the money from the MFA without listing what it's for. We can't just say $1 million for X roads. We're going to have to list what those roads are and the costs. And we will need to come back to council to get that borrowing in place. We can't go and borrow without council's approval.
To our CAO, were you going to add to our Director of Finance?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I think it's important to note that there are different accountability mechanisms here at the district. We are not borrowing for any blank check. As our Director of Finance just indicated, we have to provide the MFA with a list of projects. The list of projects will be determined after we come back to council after the study is done to get the council's okay with respect to what that list is. What's happening here is if you do not approve the $1 million, we have to do a budget amendment, which slows down the progress we will make on our roads for another couple of months, even after the study. So what we're trying to do is be cognizant of the service requests in this community, and not just requests, they're demands for us as leaders in this community to start to deal with our road issues. It's a different set of accountability mechanisms. The budget is one thing, and internally and with council, you control what happens with that borrowing. So I think we need to be careful about saying we're borrowing with a blank check, because that's in fact not true.
Did you have another question, Councillor Casper?
Well, I'm glad it said that a list will come back to council. That was never clearly identified in this budget.
We did hear that in the staff report.
But I'm just saying it's not clearly identified in this budget that, in fact, here's the list. Normally there's a list prepared before you spend money on all the projects. That's the way it's always been here for 17 years. So there is a fundamental shift. And perhaps, you know, to my fellow council members who may not have served on the Finance Committee or perhaps didn't read the detailed budget sheets that were previously supplied to council members, outline every single capital project and a dollar amount associated with that project. And then those were included in the capital listing. And it's a fundamental problem. And I'll vote no. That's my right. But I just don't follow that practice. And I'm not here to get into a debate with staff. That's not our place. It's not council's place, and it's not staff's place. Our right around this table is to control spending. We're the elected officials. We also determine levels of service based on our budget. That's our job. It's been brainwashed into us. Every year, anybody decides to go on these forums and learn more about local government. That's our job. And our job is to question every step of the way. Because, a year and a half from now, guess what? We're the ones who are truly accountable to the taxpayers. And I'll never forget that. I didn't get elected here to just do what people tell me I should be doing. Ever. So I have every right to question, and I have every right to vote accordingly. but I stand by it. Normally, in past practice, we always had a list before we contemplated spending money. And I think that's important. So I applaud staff for getting the list. But there's more work to be done. And I'm sure staff would appreciate the fact that I have to live with myself as to the position I take and the comments I make. Because I wouldn't be true to myself. So.
I appreciate your insight and your questions.
Yeah.
You know, it's $1 million, so I totally appreciate where you're coming from. I also totally understand where staff is coming from and the community and the need to have our roads repaired and to make them safe and to make them whole. So, yes, Councillor Ray, then Berger, please.
Yes, you know, I think I heard prior to this discussion when we were talking initially that they would provide that list for us, and I was confident that they will do that. And I personally don't see any need to hold up the budget process if I trust the staff to get that list to us, and we'll ultimately make the decision.
Councillor Berger, please.
Yes, thank you. So I'm sort of taking this from a different perspective a little bit. If the MFA requires a detailed list of which roads and which dollar amount is attached to that for us to borrow, then we can't do the roadworks until we get we get the loan anyhow, because all of the money is coming over from the far left column, which is proceeds from borrowing. So when we have our list done and we know exactly what roads and how much we're going to spend, and we submit that to the MFA for a loan, then that can come to council as a budget amendment as far as I see it, because we don't have the money anyways. So to give everybody peace of mind in the community that rather than saying we're going to borrow $1 million to do some road work, we can say we're going to borrow, let's say it comes out to 1.3 to do this road, this road, this road at this amount. And it all just comes and it's all done with full, I hate the word transparency, but you know what I mean, with full detailed. I mean, I have complete trust in staff that our roads need to be done. I've driven around them, they're horrific, and I completely agree. And I agree that maybe $1 million isn't enough. Maybe we have a larger priority of need. Maybe our large collector roads need more than what we're seeing. So for me, I'd like to see it happen concurrently when we apply for the loan. Then we do the budget amendment so we know exactly what we're doing and what roads are going to get done. And like I said, if it's more, it's more.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Pearson on the same topic and then get a staff response. Okay.
Good. Okay, and I've heard all the comments about the $1 million and the list. What's our drop dead date for the budget to be approved? May 15th? So through your worship to the.
Your worship, through to Councillor Pearson, May 15th is the deadline for the tax rate bylaw. The financial plan needs to be approved well before that.
When you say
ideally.
Through you, well before that, what does that mean?
As soon as it can be done, because it takes a while to do the tax rate bylaw.
Okay, so I guess a question through your worship to staff, to the Director of Development Services, would it be possible to have a list and some prices or some estimates in the near future by the next budget? Because I mean, obviously it's March 27th, so somewhere I'm hoping by middle of April, we could have the budget approved with that. Is it? And I'm just looking for some room. We're going to develop a list. We're going to have to, you know, sounds like everybody in the background is prepared to have a list ready to the MFA for a loan.
No, they're not actually. What they're asking is in that amount, there would be $50,000 to get the proper study done to come back to us.
But it's not part of the million, right?
Yep, through your worship, the $50,000 for the road study is a separate study outside of the million. It's obviously we can't do a good job spending that money without a proper assessment. We can obviously tell by walking and driving the roads which ones are the worst. They might not be your priority. We'll get that list obviously coming forward. We can't borrow any more than $1 million for this. So if it comes in at 1.3, we're not borrowing any more than that. The Director of Development Services and myself had a discussion with MFA. That's the max they're prepared to lend to us for this issue.
That's why this is a starting point to us to get on with the work. the longer we take to adopt the bylaw, nothing, like everything is frozen. So that means that postings can't be posted, work can't be tendered, nothing can be spent until the budget is adopted. And yes, there's a tax rate bylaw that follows that needs to be passed, but in terms of council actually adopting the bylaw, that's why we had the meetings, because the community is waiting for us to deliberate. We're going to be moving into the second quarter of the year next week, and nothing can happen in the community until this is adopted. That's why it's prepared, and that's why we had the meetings. Councillor Pearson.
Through your worship, through to the Director of Finance, could you prepare the budget with the cost of borrowing without actually borrowing, so that you would come back to us with an approved list that then there would be comfort level around the, I think, around the or maybe I'll let the other councillors speak for themselves. I would have a comfort level, say, if you make a budget without the actual $1 million in it, and the cost of borrowing the $1 million would be approved by us.
Yep, through your worship, I was just going to suggest that to help move this along, as the impact on taxes is the interest on the debt. It's not significant, but it is an amount. Significant hit to the percentage on it's, over a 10-year period, which we were hoping to be able to borrow over. But you're looking at under $20,000 a year in interest, which is a lot of money, but you're not going to see a big change in the overall tax number. It can certainly even be funded out of a contingency fund until it's brought back with the list and the borrowing bylaw that we're going to have to do at that time. So I can take it up, certainly take it up.
Okay.
So in this case, you can take the $1 million out, and then everything else would remain. How does council feel about that? That would give Councillor Berger more comfort, Councillor Pearson more comfort. How does Councillor Casper feel about that?
As long as we get
Can you have your microphone? You need the. He
As
requires the
long as we
list.
get a list.
And I think we all want the list.
Want a list.
And that's where the list will come, and then with resolution,
And
it'll
if
go
I
to
may,
MFA.
food for thought, so we don't go through this exercise next year, that we have a list, a detailed list.
Well, I think the report that we're going to get, we're hearing, is not going to be work that can be completed this year. There's going to be carry on going forward. It's the beginning of a program that we really need to start. So if staff can take out that $1 million and council is comfortable, then I at least feel better that we can still move forward with this, and there's comfort at the table. What other outstanding, something from our corporate officer, please?
Your worship, if I may, one option for council as well is you can place that money in abeyance until council releases it following a report. It would save you from having to take it out and put it back in as an option, because what I'm hearing from council is you want a report first. Well, you can just put that money aside, and so it's still there, and it doesn't get released until you then release it after your report. It would save you a step later on as an option.
Put $1 million into our contingency fund?
No, it's just that it's you don't have to move it.
Okay.
No.
Councillor Ray?
No, it doesn't impact the tax rate, so that's fine.
Okay. So you're moving first reading. What about the $1 million?
I think.
Your microphone isn't on.
Well, I'm gauging there's consensus, and I'm prepared to go with the rest of the council members. And I've raised what my concerns were, and I've been given assurances that the list will come back with great detail.
Okay, so Councillor Casper has moved first reading, and it's been seconded by Councillor Pearson. I'm seeing a few puzzled looks. So wanting to clarify that the $1 million is staying in the budget then. We're adopting this as it's presented, and everybody here is very clear that they want the report before anything's spent. Staff are very clear that they will be providing us the report before they're even borrowing. So I think we all know that, and that's putting council at ease, and it's putting hopefully our audience and other viewers at ease as well. We are going to receive full report back. So you're comfortable with the budget as it's presented. That's what's been moved and seconded. Am I very clear that that is correct?
Yes, and
Okay.
if I could give some concrete examples of what's happened in the past. In the capital section, there's been a number of projects that were either never started or only went halfway through. So that didn't mean to say that that the opportunity to do something was lost, because it could be revisited next year, and that remaining amount or the full amount, whether it's $1 million or not, could then go into next year. You see, it all depends what that list says. So.
Okay, Councillor Berger.
Yes, I guess just through you to staff. Do we have, Mr. Blackhall spoke earlier about $1 million was the max that we could borrow? Yes. So we have assurance that we can obviously borrow the $1 million then? Okay. Because again, that was the other part, the other piece of the puzzle for me, without having just what roads were identified and how much they were, and that's why I said maybe it's more, was just that, do we have assurance that we'll be able to borrow with $1 million?
That's the research that's been done, so that we're firm on. It's just that is the cap maxed. Yeah. Okay, further from?
Through your worship to Councillor Berger. I misspoke just a few minutes ago. It's not 10 years, it's a 5-year loan, which means like we don't need voter approval. We still need council approval, obviously. So we can't borrow without council approval, without giving MFA a detailed list of what we're borrowing it for. But I just want to clarify it's 5 years. And that is the maximum that they were prepared to go. Our total debt servicing limit, as it stands as of last year's end of the audit, is $1.9 million a year. So.
Okay, Councillor Ray.
Yes, and I'm just wondering if that includes the adjustment on the for the ground search and rescue for the community grant, the additional $1,000.
Would that be looked after in this? Yeah, okay. I'm seeing nods, so that's fine. Okay. Any other questions on first reading? I think what I would like to see going forward is, and it's something that we all strive to work on, is improving our communication. So is just for staff to give some feedback to say, okay, this work is being tendered. As we look at our capital projects, here's where they are, here's what the status is. Maybe this is a no-go for whatever reason, so that council gets those updates. I think that's something that we've talked about that we'd like to see, so we can actually check off the items in our as we go through our capital list, and then to get notices of what's being tendered out, so that can also flow. And I think this is a positive thing, because we're investing in our community, we're rebuilding our community, we're bringing more, putting more locals to work, and maybe inviting others into our community who will hopefully have lunch, spend money, do their groceries, enjoy everything that we have. So this is a positive thing, and I think that messaging is very important. And I think I'm a list person, so I like to see that things have been checked off and that we're getting through things. And so those sorts of, that sort of conversation, that sort of piece I would like to see come forward. I'll go to our CEO and then to our finance director, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and staff has certainly heard that loud and clear. We've been having conversations with respect to how to communicate more fulsome to council and, of course, our public. And there's different ways that we can do that. So we'll be having that conversation probably in the next 2 weeks or so with council.
Okay, and our finance director also had his hand up.
Yes, Your Worship. I just like to point out, going through the audit, I've realized one of the MFA loans where the actuarial adjustment and the sinking fund earnings is changing the amount of interest. So that is the sewer debt, and it's dropping down by approximately $250,000. So I've incorporated that savings into this. It doesn't impact taxes. It only impacts the sewer fund. And what it does is impact, obviously, the amount that can be transferred into the sewer reserve fund. But it changes the bylaw amount for the under expenditures, the first line, the debt line. Debt servicing goes down, and the transfers to own funds goes up by the exact same amount. So it's 154,000 switch between those two lines throughout the 5-year plan. It doesn't impact the bottom line numbers, and it doesn't impact property taxes, but I thought I'd just bring it to your attention.
Thank you for that. Any other questions on first reading?
Could I just make a comment?
Yes, on first reading?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So it's my hope, and the mayor had asked me to send a note as to what some of my concerns were. I have a problem, and I know it's not going to change. It will not change. I don't feel comfortable with having, and it's no disrespect to our CAO, but it's a new practice that's been embarked upon for the CAO to have a contingency fund. Council did make a decision that that fund would in fact be, any expenditures from the fund would be approved by council, and so I support that. But I'm not comfortable with the practice. I'm also not comfortable with us anticipating spending $25,000 to $27,000 on refurbishing the vacated office space by VHA so that we can supposedly accommodate more staff. I come from I guess maybe it's my age, my lifestyle, that operate and live with what you can manage. Everybody has wants, and I'm more inclined to look at needs. And there are offices down there, there's spaces, and I would hope that we wouldn't embark upon those types of expenditures without addressing the sprinkler system and the plumbing that are badly needed. To me, that's a priority. You know, we have a guesstimate as to what it's going to cost. What are we going to do if it costs $200,000? And I'm asking, I'm actually begging, don't spend money where you don't have to spend it. You know, fancy offices and changes there really don't wash well with the public. They don't wash well with me. But I've heard that, and the way I am is from listening to what the public has had to say. And the public says, look, we want roads, sidewalks. We want things that we can touch and feel and use. They can't use these offices. They can't use this space. And so to them, it doesn't mean as much. So I have to respond to what their needs are. And I will do that. But I'm imploring that we sharpen those pencils and not necessarily embark on any large spending and really think twice. I think there would be kudos for staff if we actually came through with a surplus and didn't spend all the money that's been allocated. The public would go head over heels. And I just hope that if we take it along those lines, then all of us will look a heck of a lot better in the eyes of the public. So I'm going to support the budget, but also I'm just asking that we go easy on certain things. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Casper, and I appreciate those comments. For myself, being downstairs, when I've seen improvements happening within the municipal hall, they've been done in a very frugal manner, respectful manner, but the offices needed to be painted and recarpeted just for the health and well-being of our staff, who are one of our greatest assets here. When you see carpeting held together with duct tape and loose cabling and just marks and damage all over the wall, it's a shabby environment. This, even here, is a public space that needed to have improvements. So I imagine that frugal attention to detail will carry on in the other areas. And I think when you have a pleasant workspace to come to, you do put your best foot forward, and that's what we're seeing in our staff performance. So I look forward to that and wish you well in the improvements. But thank you very much for the comment and for supporting the budget. Anything further from members of council? So I'll call the question then on first. Oh, there's a hand going up from staff, if I may.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to bring up some wording that's been brought about from what you've just discussed now, just so we can maybe possibly do a friendly amendment just to make it good and kosher and done.
Okay. Our screen is black. Okay. Okay, so there is a friendly amendment then, and with the addition that is with the increase of $1,000 to the community grant fund and amendment to the sewer fund debt interest. Is the mover, who I believe Councillor Casper, and the seconder Councillor Pearson, in agreement with that amendment? Okay, so then I will move that amended motion, please. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Looking for Bylaw 664 to be read a second time. Moved by Councillor Ray. Seconded by Councillor Pearson. Second time as amended, I should say. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. And moved third reading by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Pearson as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Council. Staff, you have a very busy year ahead. We wish you the very best. Okay, so next we're moving into 7.1, which is covenant requirements for the proposed Knox Church development. This is a report that was requested from members of Council. I'm just pulling up the report. And questions, please. I think, is this addressing some things? I believe, Councillor Pearson, it was something that you wanted to discuss further?
On Lot 8?
No, this is the covenant requirements for the proposed Knox Church development. When we were doing the public hearing and the adoption back in January, there was a motion brought forward asking about some things. Our Director of Development Services has his hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. At that meeting, I think it was brought forward by Councillor Casper with regards to bringing the covenant forward, and it was my misunderstanding, unfortunately, that caused the delay of getting it here. I thought he was more focused on the transit issue with regards to the covenant, but it was sort of the whole encompassing requirements for the covenant, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions that come up from this report that's been prepared.
Okay, Councillor Casper, you had made the motion. I thought it was Councillor Pearson.
Yes. Well, the first thing, yes, the transit. The information supplied in the staff report goes back to comments that were passed on to the district in 2012 and I'm assuming 2013. That was, their discussions were based on 142 unit development originally, and this development now has been pared back to some 40 plus units, a totally different concept. There's also documentation here where transit talked about there may be a route change with the local services. That was identified 5 years ago. There's been no change in the service, and it's never been expanded. And in light of the fact that the gas tax has been not approved, I don't envision, as our mayor has indicated, that we would see many improvements. So things have changed from 2012 and 2013, and on Schedule A of the 219 covenant, even though it was amended, it still has in there the item that relates to the requirement to do a bus stop, and I don't support that, and I think it's an unnecessary burden on this development, considering the fact that the development is roughly two blocks down to Sooke Road, and my big fear is that if they were required to do the development or to do this work, then I wouldn't want to see that money spent elsewhere, that they could be asked to spend instead of just constructing something. And also, when you look at the actual design of the road system and the rights-of-way that have been secured, there actually is accommodation for a bus to pull off just down half a block. It's actually to almost in front of their existing lot that they have. I can't remember what lot it is, A and B or something like that. But I'm prepared to move that the covenant be amended and that the requirement for a bus stop be deleted from that. And hopefully get a seconder to that for discussion.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. So
So-
with this, I need a clarity question here. Because this has been completely passed and signed off, like where does that leave us then? I see here that if we were to open it up, then it needs to come back and there's a public hearing fee and the like. But where does that leave the developer or the applicant? Like, where does it leave them with this?
Your Worship, it's my understanding in discussions with staff members that because the covenant or the conditions of the covenant were placed on the proponent during the rezoning process and at a public hearing, that it may require a public hearing, another public hearing, to have this portion of the covenant deleted. Who pays for the public hearing, etc. I'm not sure at this point in time whether council would be prepared to assume the cost of the public hearing or pass the cost along for the public hearing to the proponent who has not asked for this condition to be released. So I leave it to council to direct staff.
I would have trouble passing the fee on to the
Right.
proponent.
So my suggestion is this: because it's council initiated, that we absorb the cost of the application or the fee. It's then, and that would include any advertising costs. I'm also going to suggest that we waive the public hearing requirement, and my rationale behind that is because, to me, it's totally unnecessary. This is a technical matter based on old information and old requirements. It's 5 years ago when Transit submitted their information, and then it was part of the original CD's rezoning that had 142 units. Things have changed, even to the point where council even considered not taking any more land on the north end of this development in relation to the Waterway Road, and that was changed, and nobody batted an eyelash because we had already done the work. So that's my point in this exercise. And also, the most fundamental part of this is that this type of item actually, when you look at the rules and regulations in regard to amenities, it clearly states that it's very difficult for a municipality to ask somebody to provide an amenity like this when they already have in their budget bus shelters. So we already have, and have consistently for years, had money available for what was called 2 bus shelters and money for bus shelter improvements. This year we've set aside $18,000. So it'd be pretty difficult for us to say to somebody else, we want you to pay on top of what we've already agreed to pay for and supply. And then my last point is this, is that amenities in our own policy are not a requirement when you have low-cost housing. And so before it was a combination housing project. They had mixed housing. They had some level of market housing and low-cost housing. So things have dramatically changed. And so I think that in order for us to be good corporate citizens as a municipality, we should initiate the change. So I would ask council to support that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you. I guess for me, asking somebody to put a transit stop when the bus doesn't go up or down that street. On their side, that's right. It doesn't come back, and I think the way the community is growing, I highly doubt that it would come down there. It wouldn't be efficient, and I don't know. We don't seem to have that great of service with BC Transit, so I don't really see it expanding. So I certainly have no difficulty taking that off the table.
I think for myself with the bus, our community bus runs one way at the moment. The bus goes up Church Road, and it does a one-way loop. What we want to see is a two-way loop occur. So you go there and you come back. The bus goes up Church Road and then it loops the long way around. So it's not efficient for getting you home. Yes, the gas tax was not supported by the province. I have another announcement to make, though, a little bit later. But that doesn't mean that in years to come, things will change. With Lot A being developed, like right now, there's no bus service on Wadham's Way at all because it's a new road. When Lot A gets developed and there's a library there and potentially other community facilities, we can easily make the argument that we need to see the community bus loop back along Wadham's Way and come down Church Road, pick people up and continue on, and make that case. Being at Transit Commission now, what they receive is activity from all the communities. So they see that in Sooke, this proposal that came forward that they did a referral on is now going through the process. So then that starts to build up the activity. And then us championing the need for more service puts more pressure on the commission as well. When I look at this, yes, there is close walking proximity to Church Road if you can walk. So if you are unable to walk, this is geared towards seniors, that may require assistance, walking to Church Road can be difficult. And that's why I think the transit stop could pick people up. I wonder, in the interim, could that just be used as a loading zone? We see how in another area of our community, we addressed parking challenges because it came abundantly clear that there were seniors that needed assistance getting to and from. So in this case, rather than putting it, and as for transit only, you would have an area that could be used as a passenger loading zone so someone with a disability could be easily picked up and moved down the road. Should a community bus come down, then they have another place and maybe they can share it with transit. But I think the accessibility, yes, it is close to walk if you can walk. Go ahead, Councillor Casper.
Yeah, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I still think there is a requirement for a 2.5 meter dedication along Church Road, which would accommodate some drop-off area, correct?
Okay. My only piece that I'll add is that I don't want to see us making this change cause any hardship or any delay to the actual people doing the project. If they're content to go as is, they need, like, we haven't heard from them today. I need to know that I'm prepared to support either way. I don't want to see them delayed or held up or anything. They need to move ahead with their project. If this helps them move ahead, great. If this delays them in any way, but I don't know that because they're not here. So that's my challenge. So I'll go to our Director of Development Services. Okay, I'll go to him first, and then I'll get a resolution from Council.
Thank you, Your Worship. Myself and staff have not heard, at least I have not heard from the applicant. I particularly don't have any problem with removal of this requirement, but I just want to say I have been in contact with the Transit Authority just to make sure what they were up to and what they were planning for the future. They are looking at Church Road as a whole, particularly with the dynamics and the development further to the north. They consider that it would be two-way traffic on Church Road, but probably not to the year 2019 at the earliest. So, and with the dedication we're getting, we can work with the applicant or the proponent and have some kind of a drop-off area, not necessarily a designated bus stop, if you will.
Okay, to Councillor Ray, please, and Berger.
Thank you, Your Worship. My concern was one, under the item, let me just find it again. It's 6, 7, or 8. It basically said that they had, it's in number 6, that they have to have a bus stop with the waiting area prior to occupancy permit. And my concern when I was originally looking at this is you've got a bus stop with no bus service being put there because they have to have it there before they can get occupancy. And then that, I think, will lead to confusion as to people not understanding, well, there's a bus stop, why isn't there a bus that comes there? So, but the piece for me is that bus stop had to be in place prior to occupancy. And so that's the challenge.
Am I correct in that there's a representative of the applicant? Can I get a resolution from council? It must be unanimous to allow you to speak at this point. So moved by Councillor Casper, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. I just realized that we have another live motion, and now I'm adding another motion. Is that okay? So that I can, because we can't pass that without, I'm not comfortable passing it until I hear from.
Yes, Your Worship, that's fine in this case.
Okay, thank you. Could you please come forward and introduce yourself, please? I need you to turn on the microphone. Thank you.
Elaine Cowenberg, Knox Vision Society. I'm here as a committee member representing the committee this evening. We do not want to incur any more costs as our building is imminent. We are waiting for our funding is about to be released from the BC government, the first stage of it. So we are seeking to proceed as quickly as possible.
What are your thoughts on what council is doing right now in terms of the bus stop?
Well, we were not seeking to have a bus stop.
Okay.
It's not really what we want on the property. It's tight enough. It will be tight enough with the parking situation and egress and access to the parking lot.
Okay. Is that good? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. I didn't realize that you were here for this, so I'm glad we had this opportunity to hear from you. Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Berger, please.
Yes, thank you. I was going to touch on what Councillor Ray said as well. And I remember going back a few years that we had a lot of conversation regarding the bus stop, and we seemed to sort of go around and around about the bus stop issue. And I think just in the essence of trying to get the project going, we all just sort of said, okay, that's fine. But in looking at even the letter, which Councillor Casper did refer to, the letter from BC Transit back in 2013, they did say that in the future, possibly a two-way service may be desirable on this route. Well, that was 4 years ago, and it's still not there. And in their recommendation, it says that BC Transit has no objection to the proposed development. So the fact that BC Transit had no objection and didn't make it a requirement 4 years ago based on 146 units, now that we're looking at 40 units, I completely agree with what the rest of the table is saying. I think that this is an unneeded $15,000 to $20,000 expenditure because they want the bench, the shelter, everything. So they're quite pricey.
Yep, no, and that's fine. I needed to hear from the applicant, which I had, because I didn't want to change, or it's just I don't want to hold anything up for them. So that was where I wanted to get the clarity and also clarifying that. So is there anything further on this motion that's in front of us that's been moved and seconded? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Can we send something in writing? I know that we have a representative here, but I think just something should be noted in writing that at this meeting, council made this date so that they have it in writing that they don't need to do this, and then they can roll ahead.
I'll prepare the letter, Your Worship.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, so we do have some new business additions. First off, Councillor Pearson brought up a matter regarding Sunriver and Sunriver Way and Poplar. At two open mic sessions, there's been a resident that has come forward, and it's regarding the intersection when you're coming along Poplar to turn left or right onto Sunriver Way. There's some hedging and just also the sight line itself. So number one, a lot of people are speeding down the hill. And number two, it's the sight line. So I've also heard from residents in Sunriver that along Sunriver Way itself, visibility can be difficult because of the parking when you're driving up and down the road. Well, more going up, because when the sun's setting and the vehicles that are parked on both sides, sometimes that can cause an issue. So the idea here, from what Councillor Pearson and I heard, was to have a conversation about Sunriver and what options are available to us. The resident had put forward the idea, can a four-way stop be put there? I just don't know what the process. I know that we've lowered the speed in that area before, but what can you do? Can we just put in a four-way stop, or what do we need? So the idea of introducing it here was to bring a report forward at a future date so that we can see what options are available. Councillor Pearson, maybe you can add to this.
Yep. So we've heard it about a couple times in the mayor's open session about the limited visibility and access onto Sunriver Way from Poplar. So I went up there on Saturday and actually witnessed what I think was probably very typical. A lady was walking with a baby carriage going north to south on Sunriver Way across Poplar, and there was a person coming out of Poplar, was edging ahead, and she was trying to go around the front of the car, and he was trying to hedge and still looking up the hill. So it was one of those things that looked like a natural disaster. So then I actually parked and walked and looked. So I think it wasn't this Saturday, it was the Saturday before that I went there. What I'd like to do is have a staff report. I'd like to make a motion to have a staff report, examine the intersection to potential improvements.
I'll second it.
Thanks.
Okay, so that's been moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Ray. Councillor Ray, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. As a matter of fact, I live at that intersection, and it is not just from Poplar, it's also from the Demamiel side. And I spoke with Mr. Howitt last week, as I had a number of complaints from a number of the neighbors. And it is really the line of the road and how it curves and the parking. You're like, I'm halfway out into the intersection because I can't see past my neighbor's vehicles because of the slope of the road. So I showed Mr. Howitt some pictures last week. I can forward them to him, and I totally agree. It's, we've had the speed radar thing that helps slow down. But the other critical piece is people crossing Sunriver Way, either from the west to the east or the east to the west, people coming down the hill, the people, and there's a lot of young mums with their carriages that are in a blind spot as they come over that hill and with the traffic. So and it has been raised before. Yeah. I think there was actually a petition about 5 or 6 years ago that was done. Because the neighbor across the street, I understood, had quite a few signatures on it, but it never went anywhere. So I certainly think it's well needed.
Yeah, I'm aware of the petition, and I know it led to reducing the speed. So this is a good next step. Any other comments or discussion on the motion? This is what's presented here. Councillor Ray?
But it's not just Poplar Drive. Poplar Drive ends. It's
right.
actually
Poplar,
Demamiel, Sunriver, Poplar, and
Poplar, yeah,
Drives.
Poplar turns into Demamiel.
Yeah. I don't. It's Demam. There we go.
Demamiel, yeah. Okay.
Drive.
Sunriver Way and Poplar Drive, Demamiel Drive. It should be Sunriver, though, but that's okay. Okay, any other discussion on this motion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Next item, Councillor Pearson, you mentioned Lot A.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship, and I wanted to get a discussion out for the rest of council. As we all know, we've got a tentative agreement with the Vancouver Island Library to locate on Lot A, and currently we don't have zoning. We have single-family residential. So what I would like to discuss, or what I would like to propose, is consistent with our OCP, is that we zone the entire property CTC zone. I would like to propose that, or make a motion that we zone it to that for the entire property, and just go for that. And I don't think we want a CD zone. If you look at the town center mixed use, it includes just about everything with the exception of the word library, which I can't find anywhere in our zoning.
I'll second the first part.
Okay, can we get a staff report, please?
No.
You just want to zone it?
Just go for it. I want to make a motion to just go for it because I think that time is of the essence for the library.
Oh, I see.
And because we're down to 18 months, we still have a public hearing. We have a number of things that will have to happen. And if we look at our OCP, and there's lots of really good things in the town center, and then our action plans and our policies. So I don't think it should be unusual, and I think the public will support it.
Okay, so your motion is that council zone the entire Lot A to the CTC zone.
Correct.
And that's been moved and seconded by Councillor Casper. I have a question from staff, please. Can I see that page, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor Pearson, I believe that any rezoning has to be done by bylaw.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a process.
Yeah, so we'll have to direct staff to prepare a bylaw to rezone that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're actually looking then for, yeah, we need a process to come back from staff. It doesn't zone it like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Get on it.
All right. So this will bring forward then the bylaw.
Correct.
Okay. So question to Development Services, please.
If I may, Your Worship, I don't think staff needs to come back with a report. I think we just need to come back, or we just need to confirm that we will be the applicant for Lot A to go to the CTC zone, and we'll get on with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is to initiate that process.
Is it to initiate or to
do it.
To do it.
Yeah, okay.
To prepare a bylaw. So this is what
Okay.
you're asking for.
Yep.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure here. A couple of things, though, is to note, where does the library fit in? Because, yes, it's not in here, so then what?
Public institutions, and I think it's over on the right-hand side there.
Where do you see that?
Leave my little tick mark.
If I may, Your Worship, if you look under one of the categories in the CTC zone, it has an example of what it is, and then you've got to go take that example, point of assembly, go back to the definitions in the front of the bylaw, and it actually does designate it as a library use.
Okay.
I can't remember which one it is, but I've already checked it out.
Yeah, I went through front to back. There's no, in our zoning bylaw, there's no libraries.
Okay, so but that will be covered then in this zone.
Yes.
And then would things like medical services be?
Yes.
That's all included and
That's
covered in here.
everything that you can imagine.
Well, it's just in front of my face now. I haven't time to read
Okay,
it.
sorry.
So
I'm excited about it, that's all.
I like preparedness. Yes, Councillor Casper.
And just as a heads up for staff, there attached to that rezoning or that bylaw, there should be the removal of the 219 covenant that's registered against Lot A. And that was restricting the property to single-family use and also to build half of what is now Wadham's Way.
That's right.
So.
Does that need to be in the motion? That'll just come forward with the bylaw, right?
Your Worship, as part of the rezoning process, it will come out and be part and part of the adoption. The covenant would be removed.
Okay. Councillor Ray, please.
Yes, I'm just wondering in terms of getting things in order for the library. If I recall, Councillor Casper at one point mentioned because it's more than 5 years, it's a lease. Is there something else that we should be doing that we need to get done at this table?
Disposal.
It's an asset disposal or something?
Well, if it all depends. I don't know what the arrangements are finally going to be. If we are giving the land or it's a long-term lease or whatever, then normally what we should be doing is then doing a notice and another bylaw that deals with disposal of assets. Because we're doing we're selling something or giving something. And so we have to there is a provision for some form of voter approval, and I'm sure our lawyer would attest to that because it's longer than a 5-year period. So I hope that when that report comes, we have another document that we have to ratify and get approval.
I guess I'm just wondering if we're doing it just as whether there should be a second piece to this motion to get that in order, because if it requires voter approval, I mean, we should be trying to do that.
Our staff need to meet with Virl staff and then come back with that information. I think for this, we can get this rolling.
Exactly.
And then after staff meets with staff, if that needs to come in the same report or a different report.
Correct.
Okay, I'm seeing agreement. Okay. Any further discussion on this motion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Okay, great. The last piece that I would like to, it's a request that I have for council. So this Friday, as you may know, we have a relationship with a city in Japan called Natori that has been sort of not our formal sister city, but since incorporation, school students have been visiting and they've been coming back. So it's every other year we host them here, and then the following year our students go and visit them. So what has occurred in the past is that all the students, the visiting student as well as the student that they're boarding with, there's actually billeting, I think is billeting with, come and have lunch. They meet the mayor and whoever else is available. They have lunch here. They tour the fire hall. And protocol-wise, there's an exchange of gifts, some of which you'll see in the cupboard. So this has been happening a number of years, and this is the second time that it's happening in my term. Now, the question that I ran through my mind is, how much is the gift, and where does the lunch money come from? So I guess in the past, it's just happened. But given how we want to know how because I'm not aware of a resolution coming forward. It's just things happen. So that's where, just in the essence of understanding where everything is going, it would make sense to me that council approves the gift and funds the lunch. I don't know how they've been done before. So Councillor Casper is supporting the lunch.
Seconded.
And seconded by Councillor Pearce and the gift. And then so I'll be going shopping for said gift. Is there a limit? No limit?
No. It's not a blank check. Okay.
Usually it's something I think is around $150, $200 mark. This goes to another government office. We've had the mayor of Natori visit in the past. To our corporate officer, please.
Your Worship, you could probably pay for that out of government relations.
Okay, so just so we understand where this is coming from. Did our Director of Finance have his hand up?
Yes, Your Worship. No, I was just going to, or the hospitality and meals line item too. So.
Okay, I didn't know we had a hospitality fund. So it's just, and that's why I like to have these conversations. And so, of course, it's Friday. All council is invited, if you're available, to come and to meet the students. And then I think we should consider visiting them in the future year. So anyway, I'll call the question on the motion then. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, thank you very much. I just have a bit of comfort with that. Okay, so we have our correspondence file here, March the 6th to March 20th and March 27th. Are there any questions or items arising from the correspondence? sorry, it's dated March 27th. The correspondence is from March 6th to 20th.
Move receipt.
Moved by receipt by Councillor Ray and seconded
Pearson.
by Councillor Pearson. Are there any, the one thing that jumped out at me is that there are several letters about the banning of plastic bags in Sooke businesses. We have received a report from Transition Sooke and Net Zero Waste in the past. I know that Victoria is implementing something. Some businesses have already done this. So is there something that, Councillor Ray?
I only glanced at it, but there was some response back from the Victoria community against banning the bags, and I would like to get the pros and cons before I would take a step to ban them.
Sure. Okay.
If that's what people would like.
Well, it's here, I mean, we're here to receive, and then, of course, it doesn't mean it's the end of the conversation. You can always look at bringing something forward at a later date. Any questions or anything on the correspondence, aside from receipt? Yes, to our CAO, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, to Councillor Ray. The City of Victoria did receive a lot of complaints with respect to banning of the bags. So what they've recently decided to do is to do a 6-month study on what the implications of that would be. Might I suggest to this Mayor and Council that we wait until Victoria does that work so we're not duplicating efforts here, and staff will bring a report when we know the results of that study to Mayor and Council and then the public, of course. There's no need for us to be studying something and hiring consultants when City of Victoria is doing the same thing right now.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And I have noticed as businesses locally are already making shifts on their own accord as well, so that's always there. Okay, all those in favor of receipt? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, Council and CAO verbal reports. Do I have a report from any member? Okay, Councillor Pearson.
Yes, just a quick report that the Juan de Fuca Water Commission originally met on March the 8th, and it had to be delayed because we didn't have quorum until March the 15th. Nothing revelational on there. The Water Watch, there's lots of water in the Sooke Reservoir. One of the major discussions that took place is around the Juan de Fuca Water Commission reporting to the bigger CRD Water Commission. The voting and the weighting of the vote continues to be discussed, and that the governance of that model. A real problem that came up as part of that of the Juan de Fuca Water Commission is that the West Shore and the Juan de Fuca Water Commission are almost independent and have a rapid growth rate. But any major capital projects, as you know, have to be approved by the bigger board, and they're going ahead in the Juan de Fuca Water Commission, which was doing very well, self-funding and managing their entity. There was a narrow vote that caused a lot of concern. The Juan de Fuca Water Commission had recommended a project go ahead, and the development and everything was behind that. And then the discussion was at the bigger board was not related to the water supply itself. It ended up being about the environment and Gary Oaks, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a real risk that the Juan de Fuca Water is going to face some ongoing problems in the future. And so the discussion is around the governance model. So lots more to come on that in the future. But that's it.
That's good. Thank you. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I know this isn't breaking news, but I'm thrilled to report that the library is actually going on Lot A in our downtown core. But I just want to acknowledge the role that Director Hicks played in helping us get this completed and done. And I'm excited that it's moving forward for all of Sooke and the Juan de Fuca area.
Okay. Other councillors? Councillor Casper?
Yes, I had the opportunity to attend a CPARC meeting on behalf of the mayor, and I also had the opportunity to attend on behalf of our mayor, the CRD, a special committee of the whole meeting, and the CRD budget approval meeting. That was last Wednesday. So overall, when you take into account all of the line items that are included in the CRD budget, which includes debt retirement and the hospital funds that we contribute, when you read all that as a package, our taxes are actually going down. But from an operational side, for all the other services, it's going up. I think, I can't remember, 40-something thousand, or it is going up, but it's not a huge percentage increase. So, anyway.
Okay. The piece that I'll add is just with the Transit Commission. So I had said at the last regular council meeting when we were talking about Eustis and parking, the province did not support the gas tax. The letter that was received was that the minister had received comments from residents that they didn't want to see more of a fuel tax increase. That was disappointing news because 1 cent gas tax raises $3.7 million. 1 cent. 1% property tax is $220,000. So how much would the commission have to jack up taxes to match which would have been funded through gas tax? It would be like 20%. It would be an unsustainable amount that just wouldn't pass. So that was disappointing. What has since happened, there was a special transit commission meeting held today. I managed to dial in by conference call because now for this year, the province is funding $1.6 million into transit because I think word was getting out that service is going to come to a standstill. The way it works is that transit needs 20,000 service hours. 13,000 of those hours is to preserve the existing system. The 7,000 is to allow for expansion. So why they need the 13,000 is because with construction, which we see at Mackenzie, congestion, which we see everywhere, and reduced speed limits, which reoccur, slows down your trip. So you're not adding more trips, you need more time. So that's why to keep the service the same, you need to add in all these extra service hours. And it's because of those three factors which you see happen all over the place. Then, of course, with growth comes demand for services. So that's where the 7,000 goes into this. So for this year, that they've been able to preserve the 20,000, the commission also ordered buses, 6 buses. It takes almost a year and a half to get a new bus in our community. So if Victoria Transit didn't take the buses, they would go to another community within BC, because this is all under the umbrella of BC Transit. And so it's good news to see that for this year, the operations will continue. So the meeting was important because it has to be finalized by April. There's an April 1st deadline. So that's why the commission had to meet today to approve this. And then all of this will take place more for September. Transit is going to lighten up through the summer because post-secondary is out, school's out, right? So then everything shifts. So other routes that need more summer service and the like to accommodate tourists will see a change. Then September, all the crunch hits. So this is all in place for September. In the meantime, there's an election, new government and the like, and then government staff, transit staff will continue to work together for the long-term viability of transit. The gas tax one puzzles me a little bit because even you drive through Sooke, I drove from Langford to Sooke today, the gas is 4 cents difference. So even in Sooke sometimes the gas is a different price. Even Petro-Canada and Sooke and Petro-Canada and Langford have different prices of gas. So I mean, there's other factors aside. No one likes to pay more tax. I appreciate that. But there's other factors that change the price of gas. And it changes in a few kilometers. So really, if you're really holding on gas prices, and they can even change in a day at the same station. Should have filled up in the morning because now it's more expensive. Whereas for transit, you can see why it's so important. $3.7 million for 1 cent for transit. Like, it's a phenomenal amount that would make a big difference to our community. So this is a short-term solution, so I'm grateful for that. Most of the service expansions that will take place in September are between the West Shore and the university campuses. So I know any student from Sooke going into town will have to transfer, but they are making improvements so that you can go, I think, between Royal Roads and UVic. So, and of course, Camosun would benefit, and also changes to interurban. So that's going to improve. Yes, we still need to continue to make improvements out our way, and that's where, when our residents right to transit, it does make an impactful difference over the long term, and I hope to play my share as well. But I do need to say that the gas tax decision, local government has no input in this at all. This is a provincial decision. We're not at the table. We don't even know when they're deliberating over it. So I received a few comments saying, well, why didn't you approve it? I have no say in the matter. We wrote letters of support for the gas tax, and that's it. The commission itself can lobby for it, and that's it. This is a provincial government decision. So when people ask, what do? Now you would write to your MLA, or in this case, you would ask one of the candidates how they will prioritize transit and our transportation in the coming years. That's the question to ask. So that's the piece. Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I guess my feeling, and this has been something that I've worked on in my last term as well. I just hope that BC Transit and the commission that you sit on, that others recognize that Sooke is tied as the 5th fastest growing community in the province of British Columbia, and I think the residents that are coming here and those that are here, including our students, and our young people who are seeking jobs in the service industry that take them into Victoria on a Saturday or a Sunday, that the bus service out here is inadequate for them. So I just like to put that back on the table. It's just one of those things, I keep pounding the table on. So thank you.
Nope, and it's very important to do that. Absolutely. Sorry, so that was that's the piece on transit that I wanted to share. The Natory students are visiting. Council, you're invited for lunch. Please let me know, because we'll need to confirm numbers if you're available for that. The Rotary Fair, we will have a presence at the Rotary Fair. Staff will be there all day. We really would like to see councillors. I know Councillor Casper has already responded. Councillor Pearson will fit you in. Anyone else that's around, please let staff know so that we can get that all sorted. They are doing work on information we want displayed, as well as some stickers and some other fun items. The Legion has invited us to participate in the Victory in Europe parade, which is coming up as well. So if you are available on that Sunday, our gathering time is 10:30 in town. And I think that was it. The other thing I wanted to add was just a piece on UBCM I think I had mentioned that the positioning to the government has been put forward. One thing, and just so council and the public knows how the executive works, at convention we debate all those resolutions, and then we pass them or we don't get through them, so what happens to them? So after they're passed, or if we run out of time, they're referred to one of the many UBCM committees that exist to see what the next action piece is. So then staff take that, because this is what drives the UBCM policy. Now, if we run out of time, which last year we did, then they're referred back to various committees to be, how would you handle this, whether it's healthy communities or First Nations. When there's more clarity, because sometimes it's like, okay, we're not quite getting this, it can go back to the sponsoring organization for clarity and come back, or it'll be redebated at the next convention. It's interesting because it's like we're out of time, and then there's a convention committee that looks at this and says, you know what, some people feedback says there's too much time spent on resolutions. Others say there's not enough time spent on resolutions. It all varies, but everyone year after year is looking to improve. So that what happens is what happens, and there's still some items that are being worked on. Sometimes it's contingent on other levels of government. Legalization of marijuana, for example. It's a federal matter. I'm hearing now something about 2018 dates. So again, we always push local government needs to be at this table because we're the ones that impacted, but we are waiting for things to come from other levels. And this year being a provincial election year, things are also waiting. So that's kind of how it works post-conference, and that's where there's always a series of meetings that occur through there. So it's exciting. I know that staff are being made aware of different grant opportunities that are coming. The big piece for local government is that the province, the feds have put in a position where they put in 50% of funding for infrastructure. We want the province to maintain a 33% so that local government can only come up with 17%. Why that's important is because in other provinces, they don't put in that 30%. So for us to have to match with a 50% is another burden on our taxpayers. So that's why there's always a push that the province remain and have that piece. So it's very interesting work. It's very busy. My next set of meetings is in April, and those ones go back to Richmond. So everybody gets flown into the airport. We meet at the airport, and then everyone leaves from there so that you're not going to all. So it's kind of like I'm in the airport. It's weird, and I'm actually not. I don't get to go anywhere. So, however, but it's exciting. So that's coming up in April, and I'll report out after that. Anything from our CAO? Welcome back. I hope you had an excellent time off and you're back refreshed. You have a budget and a lot of work to do. So is there anything you would like to share at this point?
No, not at this point. I'm getting my feet under me from quite literally from getting back from Mexico. So
okay.
Thank you, and thank you for supporting the budget this evening. I know that, as I said previously, our Director of Finance has done an outstanding job, not just for this year, but the entire 5-year plan. And so, again, I would like to thank him for his work and thank you for your support. It's very important. And to the rest of the leadership team who made presentations to Mayor and Council, job well done. Thank you very much.
Okay. And are all the presentations on the website, or will be? Okay, perfect. Great. Thank you very much. Okay, so on that note, I need a motion to close the meeting per section 91CE and or K of the Community Charter. Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Pearson, I think. Yep. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. I'm like, wow, it's early. It's just after 9. Thank you very much, everyone.